Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Blaine Nicholls Show of 2026. Today is January 1st, 2026. It is a Thursday, as many of you may realize, and that means that we have kind of a dead week on our hands. Always the week between Christmas and New Year's is somewhat of a dead week, but then because New Year's day is on a Thursday. Nobody's working today. No one's going to pick up work on Friday. Things are going to start again on Monday. And so what that provides is kind of a runway of figuring out what you want the year to look like. I see this as kind of like a, 4-day stretch of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of like, hey, let me like start to play with the ideas of what I want my new year to look like so that when we hit Monday, the first Monday of 2026, I'm locked in. I know what I'm doing. I've figured it out. And a big part of that is going to be this podcast and actually committing to it for real in 2026 and going forward. So I'm super excited for the new year. I already, I've been over the last few weeks really struggling to kind of motivate myself and get myself doing things like even just like getting up early. I've been sleeping in quite a lot. Today I got up right with my alarm, did my workouts, did my journaling, did everything that I like wanted to do, told myself I was going to do coming into today. And so I am very excited and motivated by that. The main thing I wanted to do on today's episode is just talk about where I'm at and how I am trying to orient myself for a successful 2026. And that starts in my mind with a bit of a look back on what 2025 was and really even slightly further into like, what was the end of 2024? How'd that set me up for 2025? And I think that the big thing for me is that the end of 2024 for me was basically a shattering of my old life. My old life was completely blown up at the end of 2024. A lot by my doing, but I had a major relationship end, someone that I loved and owned a home with, and I moved from Washington back to Los Angeles right after that, and then right at the end of the year, I was laid off from my job and had to kind of pick up the pieces. I moved into 2025. That also immediately started with the LA fires, which was a kind of really difficult, just a really difficult way to kick off the year, even though I was, thankfully not overly affected, but I could see the fires from my window and also wasn't leaving the house because of smoke inhalation. And, so it definitely put a bit of a fog over the beginning of the year, certainly. And so, but really the big, I think, defining piece of what it would meant, what the end of 2024, beginning of 2025 meant for my life was a starting over, I need to figure out how to survive this transition period of moving out of my old life and into my new. I had to figure out how to make money now that I no longer had a 9-to-5 job that was super secure. That ended up being me building essentially my own consulting business, and figuring out what that meant and how I wanted to do that and like what types of work do I actually want to do. I went through a lot of different jobs, consulting gigs in 2025, some of which I really did not enjoy, and I had to have those hard conversations with the people that I liked working with them, but I didn't enjoy the work that I was doing. And so I had to have those conversations and say, hey, I don't think this is right for me. And despite me making money off of this, I need to do things that are actually, I actually feel good about. And so there was a lot of calibrating on that front. There was a lot of figuring out how I was going to live my life in Los Angeles, and some things worked, some things didn't. I ended up in survival mode a lot of the time, and that put me in this mode of spending a lot of time scrolling on my phone, watching TV, not getting out a ton, and not being super intentional with what I wanted my life to be and how I wanted to live. And that's, I think the big thing that I want to do for myself and understand for myself is that what I did in 2025 was really a difficult thing. It was reorienting every aspect of my life to being a single 36-year-old man with a cat and who works as a consultant and not as someone who works in a 9-to-5 job. This was a complete reorganization of my life. And so I have to give myself some grace for not accomplishing maybe everything that I wanted, or not living exactly the ways that I wanted to live in like a super intentional way, because I was doing a lot of hard things and I succeeded overall. But now we're moving into 2026. And being intentional is something that I really, really want to make sure that I do this year. And I think about my life of the past decade, and I think that my life has been oriented around this idea of finding success and being a successful person. And it didn't even matter for the longest time what that meant. You know, I moved to Los Angeles to be an actor, and I quickly pivoted away from acting and into filmmaking, and then from filmmaking into advertising. And I was just trying to find something I could be successful at. And you know what? I found it. I became very successful in advertising and in marketing. And I now can do that as a career, and I can make money at it without a ton of difficulty. Like, I know how to find new clients. I know how to find new work. I know how to make money. I found success. And I think I found success, back in 2023, 24, like I was successful, but I was very unfulfilled. I was not happy with anything that I was doing. And so I found the success that I had been chasing, and it didn't fulfill me. And now I think what I've recognized and what I am looking at for 2026 is that I no longer want to orient my life around success. And what I've decided to pivot it to is to orient my life around self-expression. I am a theater kid since I was 6 years old. I have loved to stand up on a stage and say, "Look at me. Here I am. I'm performing. I'm doing my thing." And what I have always stopped myself from doing is calling myself an artist and really building that as a core identity of myself, that this is what I do. I did do it, for the longest time, but I think I feared other people's judgment, and I feared failure, and I wanted success at all costs. Well, now it's time to throw all that away and say, hey, I can make money and live my life. That's one thing. I'll do that. But the way I want to live my life, the thing that's going to bring me fulfillment, this is my guess, is self-expression. This podcast is a big part of that. I have been talking about doing this podcast. I have dabbled in doing this podcast really for the past 4 years. And I let fear of judgment and fear of failure get in the way again, and fear of not being good enough get in the way often. I needed it to be too polished. I needed it to be too perfect. Well, this is plenty polished, plenty perfect. Let's just make the damn thing. And we'll figure it out as we go. Secondarily, on the self-expression piece, and not really even secondarily, but another piece of the self-expression is theater. As I said, theater kid since I was 6 years old. It's been my biggest thing, and I've been away from it for 6 years. And I want to build it as a major part of my new life going forward, the new life that I'm stepping into. My plan is to move to Europe this year. I'm going to be going to Europe in April through June, so 3 months in Europe, focusing mainly on Amsterdam and London and spending time there and figuring out what it would be like to live in those places, but also touring Germany and Denmark and Belgium, and just seeing what life would be like there, with an eye towards, once I get back in June, figuring out the process of moving to Europe full time. And so when I get there, and this is in April and in June when I'm in London. So in Amsterdam and in London, I want to immerse myself in the local theater scenes. I want to know the theaters that I'm targeting, and I want to go into them and meet people there and try to get involved in the month that I'm living there and see how that goes and see if it feels like a new potential home for me, is that I'm involved with this theater company. And along with that comes writing, writing for theater. I have a goal on my board of writing and starring in a Hollywood Fringe show. That's obviously going to change from Hollywood Fringe show to I think just write and star in a play is the kind of goal. And maybe that becomes the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. It would be amazing. But also fine if that's just like in a theater in Amsterdam would be amazing, right? So that's a big goal as well, and a big part of the self-expression. And documenting the process here, documenting the process of, that's going to be the main goal of the podcast, I think, is just to document what's happening in my life, also to talk about things that are interesting to me. So I'll be talking about the Europe planning. I'll be talking about self-expression and how that's going, the things that I'm learning. If I'm reading a book that I find interesting, I'll probably talk about it on here. I will talk about Survivor when Survivor season 50 comes out. I'm definitely going to be talking about it here. I'll be talking about football season. The playoffs are about to hit. The Commanders are completely out of it, so you can see my Commanders gear here. Probably not as much Commanders talk as there was a few months ago when they actually were relevant. But I'll talk about the NFL and really just whatever is on my mind on a given day. And I think that'll be really great. And my goal is to figure out how to film, edit, and post these as quickly and efficiently as possible so that it becomes something that's not a burden to me. I don't want this to feel like a burden. I want this to feel like an important part of my life. It's like I am expressing myself here. So that's what I hope it to be. And then I'm going to wrap things up with Blaine's favorite things. So what I really want to build is a podcast that is able to live on YouTube. It's going to be these 15-ish minute episodes that will live on YouTube, but then I need some little moments that are cuttable and easily cuttable for social, for Instagram, TikTok, etc., and shorts. And so the way to do that is to create a kind of repeatable process for that. And what I'm going to do is have a section called Blaine's Favorite Things, where I just talk about the things that I'm really into at the moment. And on today's entry of Blaine's Favorite Things, we are talking about the Counting Crows documentary, Have You Seen Me Lately, on HBO. If you have ever liked a Counting Crows song, ever been interested in Counting Crows, this is a documentary worth watching. I'm a diehard Counting Crows fan. They've been my favorite band since I was 13 years old, obsessed with everything they've ever put out, especially their live stuff. I've been listening to the album Across a Wire, which is their live double album of 2 concerts they did in New York City, I believe in 1997. And it's beautiful. It's just gorgeous, gorgeous music with incredible lyrics. And the documentary is really powerful. It shows some amazing live performances that are, so worth being able to see, feel the emotion of those performances. And it also just goes really into who Adam Duritz is, the lead singer, and the struggles he's gone through in his life, and how he loves to hold up his hand to the world and say, this is who I am. It's like, I think that the documentary really fit with a lot of the topic of this podcast of, I am trying to get back to self-expression, and I want to be someone who is not afraid to express myself and put myself out there as an artist. And so the documentary was really inspiring to me in that way. And I think everybody should watch it, even if you're not a Counting Crows fan. Maybe you'll come out of it a Counting Crows fan. So that is Blaine's favorite things for today. In the future, we'll have more. And that's the podcast episode for the first day of January. 2026 is here. I hope everybody has a great new year, and I will see you on the next episode.